I'm Ken Loreto, and this is my first ever video post to my blog, Blinding Flashes of the Obvious. I thought it would be nice for us to have some face-to-face time together. Now, this blog, for those of you that have been reading it, is focused on a number of different things. Sales effectiveness, leadership effectiveness, basically how to sell better and how to lead better, as well as the craft, the métier of facilitating or designing learning. And last night I had a chance to have dinner with some friends, two friends who work at the Gateway School in New York City. And if you don't know what the Gateway School is, it's a school that works with children who have learning disabilities, and it teaches them, well, rather than me just try to recap it for you, let me read to you a bit of what's right on their website. The Gateway Schools are for bright children who can learn differently. Gateway taps into students' strengths and interests and gives support where it's needed. We provide a nurturing environment where students grow academically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially. Now, if you just think about that description from the Gateway School, you'll start to see some of, for those of you in the world of learning, what we try to do all the time. Now, the challenge of this, as I think about it, is what many of us encounter with clients or stakeholders who want to put lots of content, the intellectual content, into a course. And I'm always struck by this because it makes sense on paper. Our people are smart, they'll say. Okay? Our people are experienced. Okay? And we just want to show them what they should do. So let's put lots of content models, skills, and PowerPoint slides behind you, Ken, to help them get it. My question is always the same. I hear you. Your people are smart. I hear that they're experienced. So what's keeping them from doing those things now? So in this conversation last night with my friends from the Gateway School, we got into a conversation about social emotional intelligence. And for them, it's one of the main parts of what they work on with students. Helping students to figure out how to deal with their own emotions, their own triggers, and get along with those around them. And as they were talking about that, I was struck by just how similar so much of what I work on in a class is with what they do. Sure, we have skills to talk about. Let's talk about the right way to analyze a client or prospect situation. Let's talk about the right way to actually get the right stakeholders in the room and the questions to ask. Sure, that's all tactical, but a lot of what stops even the most experienced of us from doing what looks to be common sense is anything but common sense and lies really in the emotional blockages, the obstacles that we have. I like to think of that from a neuroscience perspective as the amygdala flooding and overruling the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's like metaphorically, MacGyver from the 80s TV show. The prefrontal cortex can think of great solutions to really complex challenges, can disarm a metaphorical bomb with a bobby pin and a stick of gum. But the amygdala only gives you three choices: fight, flight, or freeze, dead in your tracks. Now, you may be wondering, so what does that have to do with work with these experienced people you're talking about? Well, the fact of the matter is, after all these years in the classroom, I've realized some basic truths like we all have emotions, and under pressure, the part of the brain that's going to trigger for us, even if we're experienced, may be the amygdala, which doesn't give us the most creative solutions to challenges. And sometimes what we do ends up being less than graceful. Now, those graceful ideas, that creativity does lie in your brain. You have this wonderful wiring, this MacGyver-like wiring there. But it's hard to get to it under pressure. So if you've ever driven in your car and you're on a route that you've been on 1,000 times before, you may have gotten to your destination, let's say it's your home, and not really remembered the journey. You got there, but you're not sure how. But if you were trying to find your way to an important event or an important meeting, and it was on a route that you weren't familiar with your radio playing your favorite song, when you have to determine whether to go left or right, what may I see you do with the radio? Most of you may be thinking, well, I would turn it down or turn it off. Think about that. That's your favorite song. And even that is distracting you from thinking about something that you need to think deeply about and focus on. So that happens in work all the time. You know what you should do, you have the directions, and yet under pressure, something else kicks in that takes the clarity away. Now, many of us aren't taught this in school. Gateway does work on things like this with their students and helps them to really recognize when that sort of amygdala flooding is happening and make a more graceful choice. But many of us out there have never learned those things. And so for those of you that are going to training, or for those of you that are designing training, or for those of you that are buying training, think about the fact that yes, your people are smart, or the people in the room have experience, but have they learned how to actually recognize when all of that experience is going to get thrown out the window because their emotions are going to kick in? Do they know how to deal with that moment? If the answer is yes, they've worked on that before, fantastic. Then let's go to the skills and the slides and actually work on some strategies for the MacGyver part of the brain. But if they've not learned how to access that part of the brain, we have to first help them with that, because all the great strategies will be inaccessible to them when they most need them. So when you're designing training, the question is really, are you helping them deal not only with the intellectual content, but the emotional content? And a lot of businesses like to shy away from this. I talked about this in some other blogs. It's less tactical. It's a little squishy. It's a little softer than the typical soft skills we like to venture into. But it's no less real, and it's at play all the time in business. There's this belief that emotions have no place in the workplace. My belief is the only way to make that happen is to leave people out of the workplace. We are emotional beings, and unfortunately many of us have not been taught effective strategies for dealing with those emotions under pressure. And the pressure of being successful in our work can be daunting sometimes. So think about what it is your people really need and what's stopping them from doing what on paper looks to be so common sense. If it's just that they've not been taught the skills and they're hungry for them and they have the ability to access those under pressure, great. Let's teach them the skills, the content, the models. But if there's something else at play, that's going to need to be addressed in your design. That's going to be needed in the classroom. And there are ways to get there. The question is, are you willing to actually go there? That's how you help people get stronger and better at what they do. Blinding flashes of the obvious, common sense, as many of us know, common sense is not common practice. So how do we get it to be common practice? Well, we help people access that part of their brain under pressure. We can help with that if we're willing to go there. I look forward to hearing your comments. I'd love to hear your perspective on this and what you've discovered works or doesn't work, or even some of the reactions you have to what I just said. And let's start a conversation here, because this is something that people are trying to figure out, and I'm not sure anyone's really nailed it yet. So maybe we can nail it together. I look forward to hearing from you.